So, folks, there has been this brewing situation that is an outgrowth of the court's response, that rather lackluster response to the Trump administration trying to deport. I use that term loosely, deport people to various places around the world that they are not from. Right? Typically, a deportation is to someone's home country, not to a third country. That's not typically how this works, right? And we're all, by now, most of us familiar with the Kilmar Abrego Garcia case, the case where, the government kidnapped a man from Maryland, and even though he had a withholding order, sent him to El Salvador to be detained by the Salvadoran government and tortured, and it's quite terrible, right? I wouldn't even, I frankly, it's more criminal than rendition. Rendition makes it sound too much of a normalized government activity. It's kidnapping, plain and simple. Like, the government is kidnapping people off the street and sending them to God knows where. Literally, black bagging people, right? Well, last week, things kind of came to a head in a separate case with a bunch of men from Southeast Asia who were loaded onto planes and sent not to El Salvador this time, but to South Sudan. Now, South Sudan is an incredibly geopolitically unstable country. It is, very again, like, leadership wise unstable, economy wise unstable. Like, it's generally not suggested that you, as like a traveler of the world, go to South Sudan. It is dangerous, in other words. And the Trump administration has apparently struck some deal with the government of South Sudan to try and send people there like they were sending people to El Salvador. And the judge that is overseeing this case is Judge Brian Murphy. And basically, the lawyers for these Southeast Asian men were able to file quickly enough that while their clients were in the air, they got legal remedies. So basically, last week, Judge Brian Murphy said, you have to, you, the government, you have to figure out a way to get these men their due process, that rights that you violated. And I know that you violated them. And I know that they're in South Sudan, but you can either bring them all the way back here, or you can figure out a way to give them their full due process rights in like a military camp in South Sudan, which, anyone with half a brain would look at that and say, hey, wait a minute. You're probably not going to be able to do that because they have a number of different legal rights that you have to develop. And there's just no way. Well, basically, the judge also ruled that the Department of Justice, Donald Trump's administration, had in fact violated his order against sending these men to South Sudan, because there was in fact an order there. And last week, tail end of the week, Judge Brian Murphy found against the government that they had violated his order. Now, the question is, did they do it by accident through some series of freak events, or did they do it willfully? Was it intentional? Because that word intentional means a lot in this circumstance, because it means the difference between goodwill and like working out a solution here in good faith, or contempt, of some kind. So again, we are dancing on the edge of a knife here as it regards, the Trump administration and the courts. And today, Judge Brian Murphy denied a request that the DOJ sent him to try and reconsider whether or not they violated his previous order. They literally sent him like a document asking him if he might reconsider saying that they ignored his orders. You know, maybe from a certain point of view, they didn't violate his orders, you know, like it just, you know, what if you pretended that we didn't violate the orders? Which obviously, again, isn't going to fly here. But I wanted to read some of the excerpts from this because it was actually pretty. I mean, as funny as something like this can be in this particular circumstance, I guess. Memorandum and Order on Defendants' Motions for Reconsideration and Stay, Murphy J. Defendants have mischaracterized this court's order while at the same time manufacturing the very chaos they decry. By racing to get 6 class members onto a plane to unstable South Sudan, clearly in breach of the law and this court's order, defendants gave the court no choice but to find that they were in violation of the preliminary injunction, which is, you know, a very short way of saying,
even
fuck
Soviet
you, no.
Tim Curry would have sent them to the one place untouched by capitalism. Spaz.
Space! Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 5 Tier 1 subs and for being the second person today to support stream. I appreciate you very, very much. Thanks for getting us off to a good start. But it continues on here, okay? Even after finding that violation, however, the court stayed its hand and did not require defendants to bring the individuals back to the United States as requested by plaintiffs. Instead, the court accepted defendants' own suggestion that they be allowed to keep the individuals out of the country and finish their process abroad. In the interest of full transparency, the court quotes at length from the hearing script. And guys, I don't know if you know this, right? But I'm going to tell you something about lawyers, all right? And judges, by extension. If a judge has to quote the proceedings of the previous court minutes, that is, things are not going well for you, okay? Here's the excerpt quoted. The court, plaintiff's counsel, is suggesting that the only remedy is for the plane to return here so that these individuals be given an opportunity to raise any objections they have to being sent to South Sudan. Do you have another suggestion as to what a remedy that would allow these people to have the process that they are due might be? Mr. Ensign for the DOJ. If I may, I think any remedy should be narrowly tailored to the violation. And so, you know, if Your Honor believes they weren't given a meaningful opportunity to express fear under CAT, and CAT here stands for Convention Against Torture. And I'm going to pause right there just real quick. Basically, the DOJ's argument for why it was totally fine to send all of these Southeast Asian men to South Sudan was that, well, when they were in custody for less than 24 hours, none of them expressed to their jailers that they were afraid of being sent to South Sudan. So checkmate, atheists. Like that's literally their argument. Their argument is they didn't confide in their jailers their abiding fear of being sent to another country. The argument is so bad. It's so dumb. Okay? And so I just need you all to be on the same page with this, all right? Mr. Ensign goes on. They weren't given a meaningful opportunity to express a fear under CAT, Convention Against Torture, that the remedy should first be limited to giving them such a meaningful opportunity. If they were to do so, then they would be given that reasonable fear interview. But bringing them back would be a much broader remedy than necessary because this court only requires compliance with procedures, and to the extent that Your Honor believes those procedures were not followed, the government should be allowed to provide those procedures. And that should satisfy the due process as interpreted by this court. The court. Thank you, Mr. Ensign. So let's say that I agree with you, that I want to make the most narrowly tailored order to address the violation of my preliminary injunction that is possible. What are you suggesting? What you are suggesting is that they can have a reasonable fear interview where they are now. Is that a practical possibility? Mr. Ensign, Your Honor, I don't know. I'd have to speak to my client, but I think that would need to be at least one of the compliance options that's presented, because that would be a much more narrowly tailored remedy that is actually tailored to the violation that Your Honor has found. No. Robert Adset, it's even more dumb than that, right? Okay? It's even more dumb than, oh, they didn't just list all of the places they're afraid of. In this situation, you are supposed to be given what is called a reasonable fear interview, right? That requires that they interview you, give you all this information, then
Outfit
ask you
is
these
on
questions.
Point. You look like a JoJo character.
Thank you, Vaughn. And thank you for the $5 super chat. It's really dumb. It's really dumb. It's there because what the DOJ is saying is that even though we skipped the reasonable fear interview, it's still totally fine to deport someone if they didn't flag down their jailer and say, hey, I am explicitly in fear of my life if you send me back to that country. Or send me to insert whatever country you might be sending them to, right? It is insane. And what I think we're seeing here is maybe like the last dregs of whatever goodwill presumption the courts have. Because typically between like the federal government and the courts, there is this presumption of good faith and goodwill extended in both directions. And I think that the courts are rapidly being tapped out of basically every drop of goodwill. Okay? Why would they send Asians to an African country? Super Jet Guy, because they're racist and they don't care. There's nothing preventing them from sending each one of these people to their home country. They're just choosing not to out of malice and cruelty. It's messed up. However, the judge's statement continues. After this exchange, defendants spent several hours conferring internally as to the feasibility of this option, ultimately deciding that it was doable. The court, I am very much considering this, but if this is the route we go, my inclination would be to say, if you want to do all of these interviews where they are, you have to do them appropriately. If you don't want to, you can always bring them home of your own volition and do it there. And so I'm not going to mandate that the department do anything overseas, but in an effort to craft as circumscribed a remedy as possible, I am inclined to say that if the department wants to figure that out, I'm inclined to let them. And this is just, again, last dregs of goodwill here.
I wonder if KAG is even returned back to MD if enough poisoning of the well has happened that he's no longer safe in MD. He deserves a full break and due process.
He really does. Like, it's insane that Kilmar Brego Garcia is still not home.
Last time you said a degree of suffering causes them to wake up and reevaluate their ideas. This revealed so much pain. And I need you to know it led me to reconnect with emotions I had no idea I'd understand again. Thank you.
Well, Shamaniacal the Shamanite, thank you for the $20 super chat. I very much appreciate that. And I'm sorry about the pain, but I am glad you were able to reconnect with some emotional knowledge. That's great, I think. So, like, just to be clear here, the judge is telling the government, okay, you can do your reasonable fear interviews in South Sudan if you are able to meet all of the legally required, like, thresholds for what constitutes one that would be considered ethical and binding. Mr. Ensign, and we appreciate that, Your Honor, and you know, to the extent that it poses challenges that would be insurmountable, we would quickly inform the court and use one of the options to comply with the court's orders. The judge continues, since that hearing nearly 5 days ago, defendants have changed their tune. It turns out that having immigration proceedings on another continent is harder and more logistically cumbersome than defendants anticipated. However, the court never said that defendants had to convert their foreign military base into an immigration facility. It only left that as an option, again, at defendants' request. The other option, of course, has always been to simply return the status quo of roughly 1 week ago, or else choose any other location to complete the required process. To be clear, the court recognizes that the class members at issue here have criminal histories, but that does not change due process. The history of American freedom is, in no small measure, the history of procedure. It is procedure that spells much of the difference between rule of law and rule of whim or caprice. Steadfast adherence to strict procedural safeguards is our main assurance that there will be equal justice under law. And I want to, I just want to let you guys know, this is from a case called, that entire quote is from a case called Joint Anti-Fascist Refugee Committee versus McGrath, 1951. The court treats its obligation to these principles with the seriousness that anyone committed to the rule of law should understand. It continues to be this court's sincere hope that reason can get the better of rhetoric. The orders put in place here are sensible and conservative. Accordingly, and for the reasons stated herein, defendants' motions for reconsideration and for stay pending appeal are denied. And I want y'all to know that that's a pretty brutal denied. That is basically a judge telling you to go fuck yourself, you know? Like, not only did you violate his order, not only did you, like, make your own, like, suggestion for how you wanted to do it, now you're saying, maybe you can find that we didn't violate your order, please, judge. You know, we really, really, really don't want to have to do these immigration proceedings in South Sudan. It's like, bitch, bring them back then. Fuck you, figure it out. And that's kind of where things stand with that particular case. And honestly, this is good news. Okay? This is good news. The more antagonistic judges can be towards this administration, the better it is for all of us. You know, like, again, people are fighting back across this country in various different ways, and judges making sensible rulings on the law are kind of one of the things we need most to push back against the threats toward all of our collective rights. You know, like, this is frankly really, really good. Seeing some level of fire and fight in the courts is really, I cannot stress enough, extremely good, especially if you are concerned about legal rights being stripped from you. Having people publicly defend due process and rule of law, these are good things in times like these. Okay? So, just a small update on one of maybe the most bizarre cases going on right now in America. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit last week, Jess. Yeah, it's not great. Call your senators, call your representatives. We got to stop this bill. This big, beautiful, bitchy bill. So I don't really have that much more of a deep dive here. But, like, if you're looking for positive legal signs, this is one of them. Okay? There are lawyers and there are judges and there are all kinds of legal experts who are in the corner of, at the very least, the basic building blocks of our legal jurisprudence system. You know, like,
help. I cleaned my room and ended up getting destroyed in a debate on Jubilee. I guess I have to go back to my lobster daughter.
Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. And no, but, like, it's important, you know? The lobster daughters and the rule of law. Okay? So it's this is good. This is good news, at least as regards to, you know, people saying, hey, wait a minute, I don't think you should be able to kidnap randos, deny them due process, and just say that they're guilty of whatever you accuse them of, and then ship them off to another country to be tortured and killed in a gulag somewhere. I think that's bad, actually. And, like, honestly, I know that that's, like, asking bare minimum, but it's nice to be able to clear that bar, you know? It's nice to be able to at least have judges saying, hey, wait a minute, you actually do have to give them a court date. That's nice. That's good. We need that. It's actually necessary. So, that being said, end of segment.
Riverboat Jack is coming to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube and swishy streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, being flame more. Your sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord. Riverboat Jack.